Steven, you're back.
Continue your conversation.
And
I'm rather
I like
unpopular
listening
on
to
the
it.
channel at the moment, Stephen.
Why?
I keep kicking the dead horse about the
PvP.
open possibility for not just PvP, but I'm talking about specifically griefing ganking.
Well, I mean, it's not a bad topic to keep bringing up.
It's definitely not a bad topic. I think we're unabashed in our approach towards PvP, and that's good because it lets people know where the game is going to stand. And we're not trying to appeal to everybody, obviously. I think if we go down that rabbit hole, there's no end in sight, and it just eventually ends up in failure. But I think that what we're doing with PvP is we're making it meaningful, and we're disincentivizing griefing. So it's that element of risk versus reward that appears in a lot of the systems, and PvP is just one of the mechanics involved with that.
And Stephen, I'd like to ask a question, if I may.
Sure.
One thing that I really, really like in MMOs is infinite, and feeling like I have infinite. My character can progress and grow kind of infinitely. I can always continue to upgrade it. You know what I mean? Whether it be the skills, things like that. So I was wondering, do you guys have any plans, or have you thought about at level cap instituting some kind of say, I'm sure you've played Diablo 3 or familiar with it, like a Paragon system, or in Final Fantasy 11 they had a merit system once you reached cap.
Well, I think
that you could improve your crit thing, improve different facets of your character without having to make yourself lopsided.
Well, I think that one of the common trends in our design is that not all class progression is tied to your adventuring class. And there's a lot of different paths that you can take in addition to leveling your adventuring class. There's our religion hierarchy. We're about to hit 2 million, which is going to then include some social organization paths. There's the artisan class. There's a lot of different progressive elements towards, not necessarily making your character better, but just making it more rounded, more customizing, kind of including both that vertical progression and that horizontal progression. And in addition to that, being a subscription-based game, we have the ability and revenue when we launch to constantly be including new elements towards that. Every quarter we're going to have patches and updates that will expand on those horizontal progressions that keep you involved in the game. We don't really want there to be a sense of end game, so to speak. We want it to be constantly explorable, constantly new and exciting things that players get to be able to experience.
Hey, Stephen, my name is Sagari, and I'm from the Aduro Guild, and I have two quick questions, and one's on topic. My first question is, what plans have been laid out for the amount of time crafting is expected to take or gathering, and will it be possible for players to spend their in-game time leveling their professions and keeping up with other players that are doing exploring or questing?
Yeah, I think the answer to the second question is, crafting is such an in-depth system in Ashes of Creation, and it's very rewarding for people who spend the time to advance to become that master crafter. And the first part of your question was, I forgot.
It was, will players be able to keep up by doing their crafting?
Keep up in what regards?
Like if somebody's going out questing or doing PvP, PvE.
Well, remember, like PvE and questing, that is more relatable to your adventuring class. Your crafting is more your artisan class. And again, it's kind of a different approach to ways that it's been done in MMOs before. These are separate progressions. They're separate advancement tracks. And will you experience some crossover between progressing in your artisan class and that lending towards experience gained in your adventuring class? There will be some crossover there, yes. But primarily, you're going to see systems that relate to one class advancement or another. And it's up to you to kind of navigate those paths.
Fantastic, thanks. One off topic, really quick, it's just simple yes, no, or maybe. are guild masters going to be able to set an arbitrary tax rate on their guild members, notwithstanding any node ownership?
I don't think there's a functionality that I'm intending to include in regards to guild-specific taxation. There's definitely a lot of tools on behalf of guild leaders that they can implement in the guild interface system, and I guess there could be a de facto like, hey, deposit this into, or this payment is necessary. But as an actual functionality, I don't think we have a specific field to denote taxation for guilds.
I have a question. It's just very quick. I was wondering if there actually is going to be an authenticator system for to log in to the account.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes, we do have that.
I don't want to push myself into the front lines, but I have a really quick question, which is the main thing that's been bothering me about MMOs for a long time, and the ones that I've played through recently. It's been Black Desert Online, if you've heard of it, and being a very hardcore player in those regards, I always had the problem that my time investments didn't really pay off when playing an MMO. Let's say, for instance, I've been playing Black Desert Online for all this time it has been out, and every time you log into the game, you feel like you can't catch up to the people that have more time than you have. It is unbelievably annoying to know that you could spend, your whole day in playing this game, but there's someone that has much more time and will always whoop your ass if you don't play as much as he does.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's been kind of the narrow. I mean, well, there's a catch-22 in that. It's like you're going to have people that are more casual, that only have a certain amount of time to play, and they won't have as much effort put into, not necessarily effort, but they just want to have the amount of time that some players who can play 10 hours a day have. And on one end of that, you want to make sure that they're still relevant and meaningful in the game and included. And at the same time, you want to make sure that the people who are spending the 10 hours in the day are seeing something from that 10-hour investment. So obviously you got to balance it. And I think that the way we balance it is we're not a narrow progression path. I mean, in almost all MMOs, you really only have like one path of progression, and that's your adventuring class. Like, I'm a fighter, or I'm a rogue, or I'm a mage, or whatever. I'm going to get to max level, and then that's going to be that. And my end game is going to be just constantly doing dailies, or going and doing these timed raid bosses, or whatever the deal may be. That's my experience from that point forward. I think that in Ashes of Creation, what we've done is we've segmented out the different layers of progression that allow people who may only play 2 or 3 hours a day to have meaningful progression felt in those few hours they spend in the day, that they can see themselves relevant in society, in the in-game community. And when it comes to things like PvP or PvE, I think that placing an emphasis on your skill and ability to perform in your certain role is going to be seen without having to dedicate 10 hours a day. So, I mean, that's something that's definitely we're cognizant of. And when designing these different tiers of progression in the game, it relates to both the casual player and the hardcore player. But you want to see both people stay relevant and reap the reward of their time investment.
Yeah, that's great.
Hey, Steven. I was going to ask you one quick question from me and from my friend.
Oh my God! It's gonna be Lalafell.
No. Steven, you talked about crafting and how it's gonna be a big thing in the game as the economy. We're gonna have weapons to sell. We're gonna have armors to sell. But there is one problem, however, that I realized in Guild Wars 2, is that in the very end game, a lot of the gear is actually the same. That means that you're gonna have a level, whatever, a max level armor and a max level weapons, and someone else would have the same weapons and gear, right?
Right.
Here is the thing that we came up with Uchi, my friend who was in here in the chat earlier. So what his suggestion was that we can have a 2 to 3% of the base crafting stats to be an RNG. So basically, you're gonna have a sword, which is, let's say, the perfect sword, which is gonna be 100, and then you're gonna have people that can craft 97, 98, or something like this.
Oh my God! No.
Right. So let me just interject. So I mean, you don't have to introduce an RNG element in order to conquer the problem you just said. Let's remove the RNG aspect and keep it simply to your progression within the artisan tree. If your progression in the artisan tree enables you as a crafter to exercise some agency over what stats the item is going to contain, and those stats are going to be specific to what role you've customized your class to achieve within parties, whether it be parties that are specifically focused on PvE content or parties that are specifically focused on PvP content. I think there's going to be a wide range of applicable stats and capabilities that weapons and armor are going to have based on what the master crafter has set those dials to when crafting that item. So you're going to see differences between the same type of gear, and then you're going to see certain set bonuses that are different. You're going to see certain passives that are different on those weapons, to the point where when you reach top tier crafting levels, you're going to have a diverse realm of items and gears that will relate to how you've built your character from a customization standpoint.
So quick question about the set bonuses, right quick. You said something about set bonuses. Will the set bonuses
reveal shit.
Sorry. So set bonuses, are those also going to be able to be set by the crafter, or is that only going to be a dropped item kind of thing?
What I will say is that there's going to be very in-depth blogs on this specific stuff. I probably said too much already. We're going to reveal more of that in the future.
Fair enough.
Hey, Steve, I've got... Go on. All right. Well, I was gonna say, so by that logic, would that mean that the artisan tree has like a lot of abilities to choose from, so you won't be able to choose from all of it? You'll have like a set path that's unique to only you or a few players.
So two things is one, there are going to be parameters on those dials determined by the recipe being used for the particular type of gear, and then second, you may unlock different dials based on your progression within other realms of the game. For example, if we were to introduce that $2 million mark on Kickstarter, which is those social organizations, being a captain within the Thieves Guild may allow, if you are also a crafter, to unlock a certain dial that you could apply when crafting like leather armor or something that would relate to people who are more evasion and dexterity based kind of classes. So like we really want to intertwine your capabilities of a crafter and exercising different customizable options on gear that you craft to your progression in other parts of the game as well, allowing further customization.
All right.
So I've got a really specific question about caravans and the defender rewards.
Okay.
As a player, I generally like to find the most efficient way to abuse things in MMOs usually. I was wondering how you're going to balance the defender reward. So let's say if I set up a route and I just fill the caravan full of useless stuff, but have a bunch of my friends defend it, and you keep swapping and farming the reward. Is the reward based on a game-generated algorithm, or is it a player-based reward or something?
Well, it sort of depends, and like I said, we're going to have bigger developer blogs than what I can communicate to you here in the near future. But caravans specifically, that system has a lot of different applications. It is not solely reserved for the transit of personal goods. It is also a system that's necessary in order to advance certain node-specific quests, such as constructing class-specific buildings within a node, or zone-specific buildings within a node, or building up the defenses of a castle, or completing different politics that exist between guilds. The caravan system is a wide-ranging mechanic, and when speaking specifically to rewards that are achieved by the players who successfully defend that caravan along its route, there's going to be a cutoff point at which defenders can join the caravan during its path. There's going to be rewards that are based on what type of caravan is being launched. And all of those rewards for the defenders should be and will be comparable to the potential reward that bandits may achieve as well. So there will be equal incentive to participate both as a defense and as an attacker. But the other most important thing to note as well is that if you are launching a personal caravan to transit your goods from one region to another, it's likely that you'll be relying heavily on your friends to participate, or doing it at a time or at a place that is a less traveled route. And not necessarily hoping that you're going to find defenders along the route who are interested in the reward, so to speak.
Oh, okay.
I have a question about like the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a genetic algorithm or anything that makes the ecosystem dynamic?
Different zones are tied to different types of ecosystems, and you'll see those ecosystems fluctuate based on how the progression of nodes in the world works. Not only that, but you'll also see reaction from the environment that brings along with it changes as well, which are dependent on players' reaction to that reaction. So it's a pretty diverse set of conditions that relate to how these ecosystems exist within different regions.
Out of curiosity, will the world have like dynamic? Will it be like a dynamic world? And I know, and of course, taking into account the node system and everything like that. What I mean is like akin to rifts. Is there certain areas where there's going to be things going on all the time? Something that like if you're in the world, you need to get out there and
Well, there's definitely going to be events that occur, and the world is vast. So it's very likely that as progression occurs, that there's going to constantly be events that players can choose which events they would wish to participate in. Not only that, but there's going to be highly active hunting grounds and highly sought after hunting grounds. Yeah, I would say that I played Rift for a little bit, and I thought that their Rift aspect of the game was pretty cool. I felt that they were kind of meaningless. I didn't really see a satisfaction in participating in those events. I thought it was a really cool idea and system, but it didn't actually have any meat to it. And I think that what is that? It's like a snake in the background. Watch out. I think that events will be abundant within the world for players to have an option, when they log in, what they want to participate.
Yeah, I got a question.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so if you've played Dragon's Dogma, will there be like some kind of interaction with monster bosses? You could like climb on top of them and smack them in the face or something?
That actually was my favorite part about Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah. I want to bitch slap a dragon.
I think we were wow. I think that we were discussing potential, hero maneuvers, but we haven't made up our mind on that yet.
Think about that. Bitch slapping a dragon. 10 out of 10.
So
I just wanted to say.
I also have a question. Will there be music macro language added to the game, like in music or anything?
Yeah, I think that we're going to have not only music, but potentially even customized dance.
No, I mean like macro music language, MML, which you are also being seen in Mabinogi and ArcheAge. It's like sort of macro scripts that you can put into games to have specific songs.
Right, that you create specific musical sheets, and those sheets then would be played out through, your flute or your lute or whatever. Is that what you're talking about?
But I'm saying that, but what kind of system are you guys going to implement? Are you going to use MML or any other sort of music?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure on that yet. I don't know the answer.
Because in the forums and on the Edge's decision, a lot of people have been asking about this feature in the game, but still never had an answer.
Yeah, I don't think we've addressed that yet in design discussion. So, I think, though, our intent is to obviously have that mechanism with the music, and in addition, potentially even with the dance. and I think that MML might not be too far off from what we're wanting to achieve.
Hey, Steven.
There's that rattlesnake again.
Hey, so would it be possible to ask a heavy metal band to do your like fantasy music?
No.
Oh, God. No, I don't want.
Pretty
gosh,
epic.
please.
Sorry.
Pretty epic.
Steven,
You're fired.
Steven?
I was gonna ask you a little question about what do you think? How are you going to prevent gold sellers, those third-party people that sell items and
Game
gold
moderators.
on?
Well, we've already implemented the construction of our security mechanisms within the game. It was important for us to make sure that in a game that has no pay to win, that we don't allow those gold seller companies to come in and try to circumvent our position on this. And we wanted to include the construction of our behavioral algorithms and security mechanisms in the beginning of the game's production. So we're going to have some very, very versatile metrics that we are using to monitor those types of accounts that come in and try to sell gold or items or whatever. In addition, just naturally being a subscription-based game in and of itself already cuts out such a large percentage of accounts that would be made in order to specifically just sell gold or items. That just, it increases the barrier that they have to pass, and that cuts out a large portion of them. And then I think that our security mechanisms on the back end of that will be able to prevent the rest. I mean, obviously, we're not going to have 100% efficacy when it comes to preventing those types of things.
No, it's not possible, yeah.
Yeah, but we're going to try very hard to make sure that that's not in the game.
Maybe some of the item degradation when you hit, and your item breaks little by little, those actually add up to the actual security, so that you buy a weapon and after a few days it breaks, so you're gonna have to change it.
Well, we're not going to have those types of items where it just breaks every few days, but there is degradation, there is decay.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's what I meant.
Yeah, and that decay does require the players to rely on those crafters who are capable of crafting those weapons to repair these weapons and armor, using a portion of the materials necessary to first create it. So,
I have a quick question.
Steven? Hi.
Hello.
I have a couple of questions. They're pretty quick, but will dungeons and raid bosses and stuff like that will have a clear time, so like guilds could compete for the fastest clear and stuff like that?
We definitely want there to be ladders and reports of performance. Whether or not dungeons will rely on those bars of performance to open up certain types of drop tables maybe some will, not all will, but maybe some will. And I think that's a cool aspect of the PvE portion of the game.
The second one is, will the game have potions? And if it does, is there an artisan class that you can craft potion with, or like alchemy or something?
There will absolutely be an alchemy profession, and that alchemy profession will be able to offer certain potions, but never potions that will replace the role of a class. We don't ever want to see what a class has to offer be replaced by items. So, these will be in and of themselves something independent of that.
Yeah, you probably cannot click the HP potions all the time, so you HP.
I love this game.
Wait, so there is no HP potions, or?
There will be health augment potions and mana augment potions, but they'll never be anywhere near what a class could perform, and they won't be as accessible during situations of combat and or high octane situations that would require a person.
Will there be like potions that like increase your attack speed or increase your movement speed or give you any buffs? Or
I don't think so. There may be, but I wouldn't answer that question right now.
That would be more like
Hey, Steven, I got a question.
You need it either way.
Steven, on behalf of one of the guys that is having mic problems, will classes have a direct influence on an establishment? For example, if somebody is a bard and they tell a story or play music in a tavern, could they earn a wage there?
I think that's part of the Tavern Games expansion that we want to include is classes having specific non-utility, non-adventuring class actions that can be performed in a social sense within the node, and it can give them some type of not necessarily reward, but just give a functionality there. I think that's something we're really interested in, especially Jeff.
You should allow thieves to pickpocket random suspect players.
Wait, Steven, would you be able to answer that question I asked you before you left?
Which one was it? I'm sorry.
What happens if you have a freehold in a node that gets taken over?
Oh, okay, very good. So, if you have a freehold within a node, okay, so freeholds exist within zones of influence. They don't exist within the node, right? The node has a zone around it that it collects experience from the players who are participating in those events. That's where it lends its taxation rate over. And if you put down a plot within a stage 3 or higher node's zone of influence, which is the only place you may place plots, these freehold plots, and that node is attacked and it is destroyed, then the zone of influence in which that node held dominion over has a time period of open PvP where freeholds can be attacked and destroyed as well, and that will last for potentially an hour to 2 hours after the siege is complete if the attackers are successful. After that period of time, if your freehold exists and is not under the zone of influence of another node, then your freehold will disappear. But it's important to note that freeholds, it follows more along the lines of when you receive a plot for the freehold and you lay down that freehold plot, and you construct buildings, a home, you put furniture in, you build industry in, you must only construct those assets once, at which point if the freehold is removed or destroyed, the design for the freehold, the assets on that freehold are considered already constructed. You only have to construct it once. So then you will go find a new place to lay down your freehold again. But it's possible for zones to be layered over each other. For example, if you have a stage 3 village node, and within that zone, within that village zone of influence, you have a freehold, and that village is actually, there's a nearby node that advanced to a metropolis. Well, technically you exist within the zone of influence of both that village and the metropolis, but that village can no longer progress because the metropolis has cut it off from progression, right? So if the village gets destroyed, then only what's in that village's zone of influence is susceptible to this brawl that exists after a siege, where people can go attack houses, and you can defend your freehold as well potentially. But after that period of time passes, now you will fall under the protection of the metropolis because you exist within that zone of influence as well.
Yeah.
I think whoever asked that question, can you put your name in the chat, please?
I feel like you're dodging a very important question. And, how in depth the efficient is going to be. I mean, these are just like these are not asking.
I actually wanted to piggyback off of the freehold question. I know in the game that must not be named, you can steal from other people's public property. Is that a mechanic that's going to be involved with the freeholds?
No. You cannot steal from property.
One more question about freeholds. If you go on or me?
Well, quick question, Steven. What about multi-boxing?
Mine
Is
is
that going to be
kind
allowed?
of short, so just to make
Personally, I don't have a problem with multi-boxing. If a person's putting in the time and effort towards leveling a character, it's to me the same as an alt. I don't really see an issue with multi-boxing personally. I know that that's a contentious issue with some people, but
okay.
Steven, would you be able to put a bender in a freehold?
Say again?
Put a bender on a freehold, like in Star Wars.
We do have certain types of vendors that are possible on freeholds, not all, but some vendors are possible on freeholds. Obviously, it depends on the development of the node as well. You know, there's certain mechanics necessary in order to achieve that unlocking. But more importantly, if players want to just devote their freehold towards building a home and then potentially even a tavern or an inn, what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to offer players a place to rest and or a place to eat your food that you've made or drink your ale that you've created. And those types of things will grant them certain benefits while they stay within proximity proximity of the freehold from which they have gotten those services from. So if your freehold is prime positioned in an area that has a certain hunting grounds that are popular, and you open up an inn or a tavern there, and parties that go by want to partake in your tavern's food or whatever, so long as you're creating that food and that ale, they're going to experience certain tavern specific buffs and benefits that they will have while they remain within a certain range of your freehold and XPing or questing within that hunting ground.
Before there's
I see.
Very
Steven,
cool.
You just talked about taverns and how people can like rest in them. So on that note, you said like resting, and like in some of your streams you guys also mentioned sleeping and stuff. How is that gonna be like? What you're gonna do with it? What does it mean to rest or sleep?
We'll be like
Right. I think it's just exactly that. When you rest, you regenerate, you get rejuvenated, and you're capable of performing a little bit better. The specifics of how that relates to am I going to get a percentage benefit on my skill damage? Am I going to get a percentage benefit on rest experience and stuff? I think we're going to go a little bit deeper into that in a future dev blog.
Steve,
I have a question.
Yep.
Oh no, go ahead, Sarai.
All right, thank you. Sorry about
Sure.
that. So in your podcast with the MMO RPG people, I'm sorry, I can't remember their actual name. You mentioned about how there are kind of theme box-ish quests that open up as a node progresses. My question is, after a node reaches its max level, are there more quests that continually appear over time? What is the plan to make it so that PvE people continually have stuff to do in the same node, considering how integral nodes are for content?
For sure. No. So one thing about the node's progression is, yes, the node will have its own specific story arcs, questing, and just different progression paths that are available to players that visit that node, and it's based on that node's development, and that's constantly unlocking new things, obviously, until it gets to a metropolis stage, at which point there's going to be just a lot of stuff to do, and it's going to take a great amount of time for a player to necessarily go through all of what a metropolis has to offer. In addition to that, as nodes advance in other areas outside of that metropolis's zone of influence, or even within that metropolis's zone of influence, it's going to have this web of connectivity that unlocks additional events that relate to the relationship between the metropolis and other nodes, either within or outside of its zone of influence. So there's constantly new adventures that are opening up, new quest lines that are happening, new PvE content that's occurring, and in addition to that, there's the player-driven aspect of it as well, between what economy is being developed and what trade routes are going to make themselves available, what politics are happening between the guilds, whether it be peace or war. There's just a lot of things happening. Also, the node mechanic allows for, when we release updates and expansions, that we can tie so much of that content into the nodes, and you'll see that be developed and become available for players who may already have a node that's existing. So, I mean, PvE is setting up that world is really the first objective, and we want to do it very well and make sure there's a lot of content that gets tied into the progression paths that communities determine.
Thank you so much for trying to do that.
I feel like I'm at a press briefing.
Real quick, let me, because I let the other guy ask a question before me. So real quick, I just wanted to know about the nodes. Are you, number one, are you going to have certain nodes that even at level 50, it's not a really good idea to go there alone because those nodes are just really that difficult, enemies are that difficult, number one. And number two, having nothing to do with nodes, have you guys thought about making a troll class by chance? Just a class that doesn't really have any rhyme or reason, just because it's cool.
Well, I don't know about the last question, but the first question, so the way that our node system works is every base zone, every base sized zone, that's a stage 0 node, and what its base ZOI size is. It contains a chart of spawn tables, basically. And those spawn tables relate to the content that exists within the zone. When a node advances, that chart changes, and it includes new and higher level content, eventually to the point where if you reach that Metropolis stage, you're going to have the most challenging content fall into the purview of that node. So yes, there's going to be, at the final stages, there's going to be content that can relate to a beginner, and there's also going to be the highest level content available at that area as well. But the purview of a Metropolis is so large, it encompasses 1/5 of the world's explorable area, and that area changes based on the progression of the nodes. So you're going to see that high level content available in the Metropolis area. But in addition, you know, if the world existed without any nodes whatsoever, you would still see a sprinkling of the highest level content available out in the world somewhere. There's still a blend of that availability in the world, and then the node modifies that as it advances within stages.
Okay,
All right.
so
sorry, you go.
Okay, my bad.
Next.
But
Next.
so when it comes to nodes, like say one node doesn't have something I particularly want to focus on, would it be easier for me to to move to a different node, or should I stay in the first node I was in and focus mainly on what I was doing before?
No, you can move to a different node, absolutely. So of the three types of housing that are available between the instanced, the in-node housing, and the freehold housing, you can designate which recognizes your citizenship. And there's a cooldown between when you may change that citizenship. And that cooldown might be probably a 7-day cooldown. But if you do not like what's happening within a node, you don't agree with its policies or the direction that the government is moving in, or perhaps there's conflicts you don't want to be a part of, or you have a conflict in interest between your guild's loyalty and node's loyalty, whatever's going to occur that might make you question being a member or a citizen of a certain node, you can always pick up and leave. You know, I think a lot of people are very concerned necessarily with the idea of, hey, I'm going to spend time, you know, building up my home or a freehold or whatever the deal is, and if the node gets destroyed, well, I've just lost everything. Well, it's a little bit different than the way it's been done in the past with other MMOs. Yes, there is an initial front of effort and items and materials necessary in order to create that home, but once you've done it once, you can now replicate that if you ever were to lose it. You know, you just lay it down and you put it up, or we will have saved positioning for furniture and stuff within the home if you were to maybe get a different apartment elsewhere, and you could click that furniture setting. You know, we want to make sure that change and development are common themes within the game. Obviously, we want them to reflect equal amount of effort necessary in order to change that progression made by the players. But you know, it should be something that is exercised regularly throughout the game.
Stephen, Jettis Snell has a question relating to the Kickstarter. He wants to know, will Kickstarter rewards be able to be redeemed on multiple regions at the same time?
Multiple regions.
So
is that servers?
Yes, so if somebody purchases the Braver of Worlds and he
got it.
EU and then wants to play on NA.
So the way it works is your rewards are account locked, meaning they're on your account. And if you have a character that's on a server, you may assign that reward to that character. If you want to reassign it and move it to a different character on a different server, you may do so. But it may only exist on one character.
I've actually got a question regarding the Kickstarter too. So with the Leader of Men package, you get the Guildhall appearance and the cloaks. Will you be able to give these to a guild you're part of?
Correct. So you don't have to necessarily be the guild leader.
Okay.
By being a member of that guild, you bring those benefits to the guild.
Hi, Stephen. I got a question. Just quickly, on max level, have you decided what that is yet? And how do you plan to keep the leveling zones relevant to max level players?
I answered a little bit about max level earlier. Hopefully somebody has a recording, and I was a little long-winded in it, so maybe you can listen to that.
But have you decided on what the max level will be?
We have an idea of what that max level is, but I won't announce it until a little bit later.
Okay, Steven, I think someone already told me what it was going to be. I won't say it if you don't want me to.
No, it's okay. There's a conception out there. I'm sorry, I'm eating strawberries. There's a conception out there. There's a conception out there that it's 50.
Yeah, that's
and that may very well be what it's going to be, but I don't want to give you an answer unless I'm fairly
Steven,
definitive.
Just a quick question about. Oh, okay. Just a quick question about the. If you get a house, let's say you get your home in one metropolis, and you just try to go to another one, and you want to get a home there as well. Can you do that? I mean, does the home give you the actual citizenship to a metropolis?
The home doesn't give you the citizenship. The home gives you the ability to choose it as a citizenship. Yes.
Okay.
So you could build a freehold, and you could claim citizenship within that node, and then you could purchase an apartment, and it wouldn't automatically default or change your citizenship. You would just now have access to that apartment, and should you choose at a later date, you may change your citizenship to that apartment.
Yeah, I'm going off.
Asking on behalf of Como, who is silent and unable to speak, he would like to know if the summoner fighter combination will be able to use flying swords.
That's not a bad question.
That's actually.
So we're going to be doing we're going to be doing class specific overviews, and it should start relatively soon. And I think he'll have a very good idea of exactly what the parameters of a summoner class has, both as a secondary and as a primary class. So I would hang tight on that, Como. I'm sorry, it's not the answer you want to hear.
Going on
Asking on behalf of myself, I have a long question. Steven, what's your favorite class that you're going to main?
If I say that, I'll skew server population.
I know. I want to know what the OP class is.
I can't do that.
I have an actual question. Tonga's been trying to ask a question forever.
Yes.
Go, Tonga.
Okay, yeah. Thank you. I have a gear about rating and. Okay.
Yeah,
Are you going to have the in-depth utility system? You said there was going to be gear and then utility items. Would these utility items be like resist gear, instant click, like the EverQuest Cobalt items, where certain parts of gear have clickable effects, or continuous buff items?
I think it's going to be aligned more so along activatable gear, and it's not just tied specifically to gear. Like, we want skills to be more dynamic than just combat oriented or buff oriented. So I've introduced a different type of skill that relates to exploration and adventuring, not just combat. And those utility skills can help overcome hazards that exist out in the open world as well as in dungeons. And it again places somewhat of an emphasis on having role diversity within groups. And it makes kind of specific archetypes have access to specific types of utility, both utility items and utility skills. So I think that's really what we're achieving by implementing both the utility items and utility skills. But I would say they'd lean more towards activatables.
Hey, end game tier sets. Is there actually going to be tier bonuses such as World of Warcraft has, or how is that?
There are set bonuses within the game.
How would
I got a question
weather
about
affect
freeholds.
basically to worlds, since not by just the world, but I mean like skills, players, dungeons. How would weather affect basically it?
Weather?
Since
Weather
I
or
heard
water?
seasons are going to change
That's why
anything.
there's so many people in here.
Weather, I cannot pronounce it.
Weather?
Weather?
Yeah.
Like
Like
snow,
rain and
rain,
snow.
and blah blah blah.
So I did a podcast yesterday with MMORPG.com, and they specifically talk about weather. I give a kind of detailed response in regards to weather in the game. But just to answer that question very shortly, weather has an important role both in gameplay and in mechanics relating to how crops are developed and how dungeons are available, what type of hazards will exist, and specifically weather will affect the economies and trade routes and stuff like that.
I have a question.
Okay, I just asked this question because I heard some rumor about a mage video that had 2 less clothes for in a winter area or a snow area. That's why. So that's why I'm asking. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a question, Steven.
Oh, sorry.
Everyone has questions.
My question is, how are you today?
I'm well, thanks. I have
Hey,
strawberries.
Nice. No bagel this time though.
Can we start forest fires?
Oh my god.
Oh please no, I'm asleep.
No, my crops.
Being that I'm from San Diego and wildfires are a serious thing here, I would prefer not to include them in the game. But
will there be
This is Breath
graffiti?
of the Wild, guys. We can't be going around.
It's realistic. It's realistic.
How
It's
how
realistic.
open is the freehold placing going to be? Is it going to be limited like housing zones in Arcade, or can I plop one down anywhere?
oh no, these are open. So basically, what happens is
OECD.
there are assets that exist obviously in the world, and those assets have different templates. And certain types of assets can be overridden, like rocks and or trees. Not the pathing assets when it's painted out, but pretty much when a node expands to the 3rd stage and it has that zone of influence, you can place a freehold anywhere within that area. And it's a very large area. There's going to be proximity restrictions based on the closeness of freeholds to each other, because we don't obviously want there to be just an ugly, countryside that's too littered with condensed freeholds. But anywhere in the open world is pretty much accessible to a freeholds placement.
Cassia Emlock would like to know how many with one character, how many primary and how many secondary skills can that person use?
That's that's undetermined at this moment in time. We will release more information on that in the near future. But I also have to cut this short because I do need to leave. So
Steven, I just want to say thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank
Absolutely, guys. I'll talk
This is the
to you
coolest
all.
thing I've seen a game dev do. Honestly.
Later.
Looking really
For
good.
real.
Man.
Thank you. Later, guys.
All right, goodbye, man.